Imagine sitting in a courtroom thinking everything is just a regular day, when a little girl suddenly says, "I can read your mind." Sounds crazy, right? But when she reveals the judge's darkest secret, everything changes. What if I told you she knew something no one else did, something that could ruin him? Stay with me, because this is a story you won't believe until you hear the shocking truth. Hit that play button to find out what happens next. It was a typical morning in the courtroom, where the usual hum of routine filled the air. The sun streamed through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the worn wooden benches. Judge Harris, a man in his late 50s with graying hair and a permanent scowl, sat at the head of the room, flipping through case files with an air of authority. To him, this was just another day, another case, another decision to be made. Yet, something about this particular day felt different. In the front row, Maya sat quietly, her small figure barely noticeable among the adults. Her dark eyes, full of curiosity, darted around the room, but her fingers nervously twisted a strand of her curly hair. She was no more than 9 or 10, yet there was a strange air about her that made her seem wise beyond her years. She wasn't a regular witness, and no one really knew why she had been brought here. Only she, it seemed, knew the real reason. Judge Harris glanced up at her for a moment, his gaze sharp and dismissive, assuming she was just another innocent child caught up in a serious matter. But then, without warning, her soft voice cut through the room. "I can read your mind," she said, her words sharp and deliberate. The judge chuckled, dismissing her claim with a smile. "Is that so?" He mocked. "Tell me, what am I thinking right now?" The room waited in silence as Maya's steady gaze locked onto the judge. Her eyes shimmered with an intensity that made his smile falter. "I know what you're hiding, Judge Harris," she whispered, each word wrapped in a quiet certainty. "I know your darkest secret." The words hung in the air like a heavy storm cloud. The laughter died instantly, replaced by a palpable tension. Maya's small frame radiated a quiet confidence, while Judge Harris's heart began to race. His breath caught in his throat as his mind immediately went to the one thing he had worked so hard to bury. How could she know? How could this little girl, with her innocent face, uncover the truth he had spent years protecting? The courtroom fell completely silent, all eyes now on the judge, who could feel his entire world shifting beneath him. A ripple of laughter spread through the courtroom as Judge Harris raised an eyebrow, leaning forward with a condescending smile. "Oh, really?" he said, his voice laced with amusement. "And what could you possibly know about me, young lady?" But Maya didn't flinch. Her gaze was steady, unwavering, intense. Her gaze was steady, unwavering, intense. Her gaze was steady, unwavering, intense. Her gaze right through him. The atmosphere in the room shifted, the playful laughter fading into an unsettling silence. The judge, despite his years of experience commanding the courtroom, felt a strange tension building in his chest. This wasn't just a child making idle talk. There was something deeper, something unnervingly real in her eyes. Maya stood up, her small body commanding the room in a way no one could explain. "I know you've been hiding something for years," she said, her voice calm but chilling. "Something you thought no one would ever find out." Her words sent a wave of unease through the crowd, and Judge Harris felt his chest tighten. His hand gripped the bench, his pulse quickening. For the first time in decades, his carefully constructed facade cracked. "You were involved in something terrible, weren't you?" Maya continued. "You covered up a crime that still haunts you to this day." The judge's heart raced, his breath shallow. His world, for the first time, felt out of control. The air in the courtroom thickened, as if every breath carried the weight of 1,000 unsaid words. Maya's face, innocent and small, stood in stark contrast to the gravity of her words. It was as though she wasn't speaking from this room, but from somewhere deep inside the judge's very mind, pulling out truths he had long buried. The crowd, tense and confused, watched in silence as she held their attention, her calm demeanor unsettling against the storm she had unleashed. Judge Harris's expression flickered, just for a moment, before he straightened, a bead of sweat forming on his brow. The air, once familiar and predictable, now felt suffocating. For the first time in years, he felt vulnerable, exposed. This was no longer a simple courtroom drama. It was a reckoning. "What are you talking about?" he asked, his voice wavering, betraying his growing anxiety. "This is preposterous. I don't know what you," but Maya was unshaken. "You think you've escaped it," she interrupted, "but you haven't. I know about the case you dismissed. The one involving your friend. The one where you knew he was guilty but let him go. You protected him and yourself." The room gasped, the tension palpable. Judge Harris's heart raced. She knew. She knew everything. His carefully crafted walls, built over decades of silent guilt, were crumbling. For a long moment, the courtroom was dead silent. It felt as though time itself had stopped. Judge Harris's world, once solid and unshakable, seemed to crumble around him. He had always believed he'd buried his past deep enough, locked it away so no one could ever uncover it. But Maya's words shattered that illusion with a force he couldn't deny. The truth rushed back to him, an overwhelming flood of memories he had desperately tried to forget. He had protected his friend, a man guilty of a heinous crime, because they shared a dark secret. His friend had blackmailed him, using their past connection to force the judge into doing the unthinkable. In exchange for his silence, Harris had dismissed a case that should have sent the man to prison, sacrificing justice to protect himself. The guilt that had been buried so deeply within him now surged forward like a tidal wave, drowning him in shame. Every moment of that decision, every sleepless night spent haunted by the truth, came crashing back. It was no longer a secret he could hide. The weight of his betrayal was unbearable, and the full force of his remorse settled heavily on his shoulders. The judge, now visibly shaken, slowly sank back into his chair, the weight of Maya's words pressing down on him like a heavy stone. The courtroom, once filled with murmurs and the usual bustle of legal proceedings, was now suffocating in an eerie silence. The air itself seemed thicker, as if it had absorbed the weight of the revelation. No one moved. No one spoke. It was as though time had stopped, frozen in that moment of truth. Maya, with an air of quiet confidence, said nothing more. She simply returned to her seat, her gaze unwavering, locking eyes with Judge Harris. The entire room was in shock. What they had just witnessed was beyond comprehension. A little girl, no older than 10, had somehow pierced through the armor of a man who had lived decades keeping his deepest, darkest secret hidden. As for Judge Harris, he knew in that instant that his secret was no longer his to keep. The truth had emerged, and with it came the inescapable consequences of his actions. His life would never be the same. But Maya, in her quiet power, had shown the world that sometimes, no matter how deeply it's buried, the truth has a way of finding the light. Well, there you have it. Maya's mind-reading revelation left the judge speechless, but what about you? If you were shocked, hit that like button and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and join the Black Visionaries family for more stories that will make you question everything. We've got more twists, turns, and unbelievable moments coming your way, so make sure you're part of the action. Share this with your friends. Let's spread the word because you won't want to miss what's next. See you in the next one.